What if the reality you experience every single day is not happening by chance? What if the life you are living right now has been quietly shaped by the thoughts, assumptions, and mental images you have carried for years without even realizing it? Most people spend their entire lives trying to change the outside world, without ever understanding the hidden power operating within their own mind. But Genevieve Behrend believed something radically different. She believed the mind is not just a place where thoughts happen. It is the creative force behind reality itself. And once you understand how this invisible power truly works, you begin to see why some people remain trapped in the same patterns for years, while others completely transform their lives from the inside out. So if you feel like something in your life is not changing, if you feel stuck in the same emotional cycles, the same fears, the same reality, stay with me, because what you are about to hear may completely change the way you see your mind and the world around you. Subscribe and join us on this journey inward. Now, let us explore the secret power hidden within the mind that builds worlds. What if everything you see around you, your relationships, your finances, your health, the opportunities that seem to find you, or somehow always miss you, were not accidents? What if they were the result of something far more precise, far more personal, and far more powerful than luck or circumstance? Genevieve Behrend was the only personal student of Thomas Troward, one of the most brilliant minds in the study of mental science. And what she learned from him, what she spent her entire life teaching, was this: the mind does not simply react to the world. The mind creates it. This is not a metaphor. It is not positive thinking wrapped in pretty words. It is a principle as consistent and reliable as gravity. Think about the last time your life changed in a meaningful way, not because of something that happened to you, but because of something that shifted inside of you. A decision, a new belief, a moment where you stopped accepting a story about yourself and started expecting something different. That shift came first. The outer change followed. Behrend understood this deeply. She wrote that the subjective mind, the part of your mind that operates beneath your conscious awareness, is always at work, always building, always attracting and arranging the conditions of your life based on the dominant mental impressions it has received. And the terrifying truth, and the liberating one, is that most of those impressions were never consciously chosen. They were absorbed through childhood, through repeated experiences, through fear, failure, and the quiet voice that told you what was possible and what was not. This is why so many people feel like they are working hard but going nowhere. They are trying to change the fruit without touching the root. They are rearranging the surface while the deeper mind continues to operate from the same old instructions. Behrend called this the law of correspondences. The outer world is always a reflection of the inner world. Not sometimes. Not occasionally. Always. And once you truly grasp that, once it moves from intellectual understanding into genuine knowing, something begins to shift. Because you stop looking out there for the problem. You start looking within. Now, this is not easy to accept at first. We are conditioned to believe that reality is fixed, that the world happens to us, that we are small, separate beings navigating a universe that is largely indifferent to our desires. But Behrend's life was a living contradiction of that belief. She was a woman in the early 20th century who studied metaphysics at a time when few took it seriously. She crossed the Atlantic alone, studied under a master, and then returned to share what she had learned with thousands of people through her lectures and writings. Not because the world made it easy for her, but because she had changed the instructions she was giving her mind. She had stopped picturing limitation and started picturing possibility with absolute conviction. And the world rearranged itself accordingly. This is the first principle you must understand. The mind is not passive. It is generative. It does not wait for reality to appear and then respond. It reaches forward, drawing toward you the experiences, the people, and the circumstances that match your dominant internal state. You are not discovering your life. In a very real sense, you are designing it. With every thought you dwell on, with every feeling you hold, with every image you allow to take root in the deeper levels of your mind. The question is not whether this power exists. The question is, what are you using it to build? The invisible blueprint. Before any building rises from the ground, there is a blueprint. Before any ship sets sail, there is a plan. Before anything visible comes into being, something invisible must first exist. This is not poetry. This is process. Genevieve Behrend taught that every condition in your life, every pattern that keeps repeating, every circumstance that seems to follow you no matter where you go, began as an invisible impression in the mind. A blueprint. And until that blueprint changes, the structure it produces will remain the same. Most people never see this blueprint. They live their entire lives reacting to the walls around them, never realizing they were the architect. Behrend was deeply influenced by the teachings of Thomas Troward, who explained that the universe operates through two distinct levels of mind. The objective mind, the conscious, reasoning part, and the subjective mind, the deeper, creative part that never sleeps, never doubts, and never questions the instructions it receives. The subjective mind is extraordinarily powerful, but it is not selective. It does not evaluate whether your thoughts are true or false, beneficial or harmful, chosen or inherited. It simply receives, and then it builds. This is why affirmations alone so rarely work for people who are suffering deeply. You can repeat a positive statement with your conscious mind 1,000 times while the subjective mind is operating from a completely different blueprint. And the subjective mind, being the more powerful of the two, will almost always win. The real work, Behrend insisted, is not the repetition of words. It is the transformation of the underlying mental image. She called this mental image the mold. Whatever mold you hold consistently in your imagination, with feeling, with expectation, with a quiet certainty that it is real, the creative power of the mind begins to fill that mold. It arranges energy, circumstances, and coincidences in ways that bring the image into physical form. This is why two people can be in the identical external situation, the same city, the same economy, the same starting point, and yet produce entirely different outcomes. One is operating from a blueprint of expansion, the other from a blueprint of contraction. And each gets exactly what their invisible design called for. Consider for a moment the blueprint you are currently holding. Not the one you wish you had. Not the one you consciously try to project. But the one that lives beneath the surface. The one that shows up in how you feel when you wake up in the morning. In what you expect when you apply for the opportunity. In how long it takes before you self-sabotage when something good begins to happen. That blueprint is the real instruction set your mind is working from. Behrend did not say this to condemn. She said it to liberate. Because the moment you recognize that a blueprint exists, you gain the power to draw a new one. The subjective mind that built the old pattern is the same mind that can build something completely different. It has no preference. It has no loyalty to limitation. It only builds what it is shown. And what you show it, consistently, vividly, and with genuine feeling, it will build with extraordinary precision. The outer world is not your prison. It is your mirror. And a mirror, by its very nature, can only show you what stands before it. Change what stands before it, and everything reflected will change too. The feeling that shapes destiny. There is something Genevieve Behrend understood that most people never do. Thought alone is not enough. You can think about the life you want 1,000 times a day. You can write it in a journal, speak it in affirmations, visualize it before sleep. And still, if the feeling underneath those thoughts is one of doubt, desperation, or quiet disbelief, the creative power of the mind receives a very different message than the one you intended. Because the deeper mind does not respond to words. It responds to feeling. This distinction changes everything. Behrend described feeling as the language of the subjective mind. It is the medium through which mental images gain their power and their charge. A thought without feeling is like a seed without water. It sits. It waits. It does nothing. But a thought held with genuine, sustained feeling, with the emotional reality of the experience already lived, begins to move the invisible substance of the universe into form. This is why two people can practice the same visualization technique and get completely opposite results. One person sees the image and simultaneously feels deep within that it is real, that it is coming, that it is already done. The other sees the image while feeling the absence of it. while feeling the gap between where they are and where they want to be. The feeling of absence is also a creative force. It draws more absence. Behrend was clear on this point. The feeling you must cultivate is not the feeling of wanting. It is the feeling of having. Not desperation, but quiet certainty. Not longing, but gratitude extended forward in time. This is an inner posture, a way of being, and it is something that must be practiced, not simply understood. She drew from Troward's teaching that all feeling has a vibrational quality, that the subjective mind, which is connected to the infinite creative intelligence of the universe, responds to the quality of your inner state as if it were a signal, a broadcast, and the universe answers that broadcast with matching experience. This is not mysticism. This is the recognition that the universe operates as a unified system, and that your inner state is not separate from that system but woven into it. The practice, then, is not to feel good about everything regardless of reality. It is something more nuanced. It is to cultivate the art of feeling from the end, of emotionally inhabiting the desired outcome with enough consistency that the subjective mind accepts it as instruction and begins to build toward it. Behrend herself practiced this before her journey to find Thomas Troward. She did not have the money to cross the ocean, but she did not dwell in that reality. She held the feeling of already being on the ship, of already sitting across from her teacher. She held it so consistently, and with such genuine conviction, that the means appeared. She did not know how it would happen. She simply felt as if it already had. And life obliged. This is the art that Behrend gave her life to teaching. Not the performance of positivity, but the deep, quiet inner work of feeling your way into a different reality before the outer world has confirmed it. That confirmation, she insisted, always follows. It cannot do otherwise. The law that never fails. There is a law at work in your life right now. Not a law that judges you. Not a law that rewards some and punishes others. But a law as neutral and as precise as mathematics. And like mathematics, it does not care whether you believe in it. It operates regardless. Genevieve Behrend called it the law of growth. Thomas Troward called it the law of causation. Others have described it through different words across different centuries. But the principle is always the same. Whatever you hold in your mind with consistency and feeling grows. Not sometimes. Not under ideal circumstances. Always. The mind does not distinguish between what you want to grow and what you do not. It does not know the difference between a vision held with hope and a fear held with dread. It simply amplifies what is consistently present. It draws more of whatever frequency you sustain. This is why worry is so devastating. Not because the feared thing is inevitable, but because worry is an act of sustained, emotionally charged visualization directed at the worst possible outcome. It is the creative power of the mind being used against itself. Behrend understood this with a clarity that was rare for her time. She taught that the same mental faculty that allows a person to manifest extraordinary success is the same faculty that keeps another person locked in cycles of poverty, illness, and failed relationships. The mechanism is identical. Only the direction differs. And the direction is always chosen, even when we believe we are merely responding to circumstances. She was not without compassion in saying this. She knew that patterns run deep, that fear has roots, that the beliefs we inherited from our families and our early experiences feel as real and as fixed as physical walls. She knew because she had faced her own walls. But she also knew, from direct experience and from the teachings of Troward, that no pattern is permanent unless we keep feeding it. The law of growth requires consistent feeding to produce results. And this works equally for what we desire and what we dread. So the practice she offered was a redirect. Not a suppression of negative thought, but a gentle, persistent return to the image and the feeling of what you actually want to grow. She compared it to tending a garden. You do not need to be angry at the weeds. You do not need to spend your energy fighting what should not be there. You simply keep returning your attention to what you are cultivating. You water it daily. You believe in it before you can see it. And slowly, then suddenly, growth appears. This law also operates in time. And this is where many people give up. Because the outer world changes more slowly than the inner one. There is always a gap, a period between the inner shift and the outer manifestation. And in that gap, doubt rushes in. The mind returns to its old patterns. The blueprint reverts. Behrend called this the period of gestation. Just as a seed planted in the earth does not immediately burst through the soil, a mental seed planted in the subjective mind requires time to take root and push through into visible form. Patience in that gap is not passive. It is an act of power. It is the refusal to allow temporary appearances to overwrite the deeper truth you have set in motion. The law never fails. The only question is whether you will remain consistent long enough to receive what you have set in motion. The self you must become. Here is a truth that most teachings on manifestation quietly avoid. You cannot attract what you are not ready to hold. Genevieve Behrend understood that the outer life is always an extension of the inner self. And so the real question is never simply what do you want, but who must you become in order to have it? Because a different life requires a different self. Not a different strategy. Not a different technique. A different self. This was central to Behrend's teaching. She did not offer her students a formula for getting things. She offered them a path toward becoming someone for whom those things were a natural expression. Think about it this way. A person who deeply believes in their own unworthiness can receive a great opportunity and find a way to lose it. A person who carries a hidden belief that money is dangerous or that success leads to loneliness will unconsciously undermine their own progress the moment they get too close to what they say they want. This is not weakness. It is the law of correspondences at work. The outer always adjusts to match the inner. Always. Behrend spent years studying how this alignment works. And what she found was both humbling and empowering. The self is not fixed. Identity is not a cage you were born into. It is a structure that can be rebuilt from the inside out. One sustained thought, one chosen feeling, one small act of inner courage at a time. She wrote about the importance of mental dwelling. Not where your mind visits, but where it lives. Because the self you are becoming is always the self your mind is most consistently inhabiting. If you spend most of your inner life rehearsing past failures and imagining future threats, you are becoming the person for whom failure and threat are the natural landscape. If you spend most of your inner life dwelling in possibility, in the quiet certainty of your worth, in the emotional reality of the life you are moving toward, you are becoming the person for whom that life is the natural next step. This is not about ignoring reality. It is about understanding which reality has more creative power. The one in front of you, or the one you are building within. Behrend also emphasized character. She believed that the transformation of the self is not purely mental. It requires aligned action. Courage taken in the direction of your vision. Choices made from the person you are becoming, not the person you have been. Every time you act from the higher self you are growing into, even when it is uncomfortable, even when the outer evidence does not yet support you, you reinforce the new blueprint. You deepen the roots. And slowly, the inner becomes undeniable. The world reflects it back. People treat you differently. Opportunities find you. The circumstances that once seemed immovable begin to shift. Not because the world changed first, but because you did. And in the end, this is what Behrend was always teaching. Not a technique for getting what you want, but a path toward becoming who you truly are, stripped of the false limitations, the inherited fears, the borrowed beliefs that were never yours to carry. The self you must become is not a stranger. It is the one that was always waiting beneath the weight of everything you were told to believe. Living from the inside out. Everything we have explored in these chapters points to a single, profound shift. The shift from living outside in to living inside out. Most people live outside in. They wait for the world to change before they change. They wait for the evidence before they believe. They wait for the love, the success, the recognition, the security, and they shape their inner state according to what they see and experience on the outside. And because the outside is always a reflection of the inside, they keep getting more of the same. Genevieve Behrend devoted her life to teaching the opposite approach. She called it the life of the spirit in the mind. The practice of building inwardly what you intend to live outwardly. The radical act of treating the unseen as more real than the seen, because in the creative sequence, It always is. This is the life she lived. Not as a theory but as a daily practice. She rose each morning and gave her first mental attention not to the news of the world or the problems of the day, but to the vision she was building. She did not do this frantically or desperately. She did it with calm, focused intention, with a steady feeling of certainty that what she was cultivating in the invisible would eventually become undeniable in the visible. And it did. Again and again. Living from the inside out does not mean ignoring your outer circumstances. It means not allowing those circumstances to be the final authority over what is possible. It means understanding the order of creation, that the inner always precedes the outer, that the invisible always gives rise to the visible, and then living accordingly. It means, in practical terms, beginning each day by choosing the dominant thought you will carry, the dominant feeling you will sustain, the vision of yourself and your life that you will return to whenever the outer world attempts to pull you back into old patterns. It means noticing when you are reacting from fear and gently returning your attention to faith. Not faith as a religious concept, but faith as the confident expectation of good, grounded in the understanding of how the mind and the universe actually work. It means treating your inner life as the most important real estate you possess. Because everything else you want to build must be built there first. Behrend was not naive. She knew that this practice is challenged constantly. That life brings grief and loss and confusion. That there are days when the gap between the inner vision and the outer reality feels impossibly wide. She did not promise that the path would be without resistance. She promised that the path would lead somewhere real. Because every person who has ever genuinely transformed their life did so by first transforming their inner world. Not by positive thinking alone, but by a sustained, sincere, deeply felt shift in who they believed themselves to be and what they believed was possible. That is the secret power within the mind. Not a trick. Not a shortcut. A truth so simple and so profound that most people walk right past it, searching the outer world for an answer that was always waiting within. The life you want is not somewhere out there, waiting to be discovered. It is somewhere in here, waiting to be built. And the building begins now. You have just heard 6 principles that Genevieve Behrend spent her life teaching. That the mind is not passive. It creates. That every outer condition began as an inner blueprint. That feeling is the language through which the deeper mind receives its instructions. That the law of growth amplifies whatever you sustain with consistency and emotion. That transformation requires becoming a new self, not just applying new techniques. And that the greatest shift you can make is to stop living from the outside in, and begin living from the inside out. These are not ideas to simply agree with. They are principles to practice. Daily. With patience. With courage. With a quiet, unshakable conviction that what you build within will eventually rise without. If something in these words resonated with you, if you felt a part of yourself recognizing something it already knew but had forgotten, then this channel is for you. We go deep here. We explore the minds of those who understood reality at a level most people never reach. And we do it not for entertainment, but for genuine, lasting transformation. Subscribe now. Share this with someone who is ready to stop waiting for the world to change and start understanding the power they have always carried within. The secret is not out there. It never was. It has always been right here, within the mind.